Good afternoon, everyone. When Parliament makes law, there's time for debate and there's time for choosing. The House of Commons has been debating the issue of lawful access for over a year now. It's time to choose. It's time to choose between victims of crime who are demanding that we as parliamentarians act to protect them. It's time to choose because law enforcement needs modern tools to fight modern criminals. Those tools are in Bill C-22. Over the past 4 months since this bill was introduced, we've listened to the debate and have taken note of where C-22 must be improved. We've heard the voices of those who've raised concerns, and I've spoken with several of them today, and I continue to speak to them throughout this process. I told them directly that we will amend this bill to address their concerns. That means clear protections for encrypted communications. That means a clearer definition of systemic vulnerability in the bill. That means metadata stored for a shorter period of time. That means ensuring industry is at the table, advising us during the development of regulations. We have listened. We would have loved to consider these amendments at committee, but its work has been effectively ground to a halt. That is a choice made by one party. We say enough. It's time for the House to pick a lane. Victims cannot wait any longer. Law enforcement needs these tools. We're sent to this place to make choices on behalf of Canadians. For the House of Commons and C-22, that time has come. I'd be happy to take your questions.
You saw filibuster in the committee. Where exactly, can you explain, what did you acknowledge?
I will say the committee has considered this bill 10 hours for clause by clause. 7 amendments have passed, or they've addressed 7 amendments. Just last Thursday, 1 amendment was considered over a 3-hour period, and in fact that amendment was supported by and adopted by the Conservatives. So that to me demonstrates that there is a clear filibuster taking place. You can call it any other name, but delay and stalling tactics is not what's warranted right now. What is warranted is collaboration and cooperation.
I'm told that the Conservative caucus is actually divided on this bill and that some of them would like to see it move forward. Have you been approached by any Conservative MPs who have expressed anything about this bill, that they support it privately?
I'll say from the outset, so if you recall, C2 was introduced last June, and since that time, we have worked with a range of stakeholders, range of individuals who are concerned about the bill. Conservative members of Parliament are a group that I personally engage with and throughout the process. All this week and last week, I've heard from a number of members of the Conservative Party who are very disappointed at the lack of leadership on this bill. They've expressed to me their frustration. They've also expressed to law enforcement the deep frustration that they have. So yes, it does appear to be a division within the Conservative Party, but for us, that's not what's important. What's important is that those who are seeking their resolution to their cases, when, for example, Peel Regional Police announced 17 arrests just 2 weeks ago, one of the things that they had asked for was a lawful access framework. So it is clear that law enforcement needs it. It is clear that we're moving ahead, and we would like to really have support of all parties in a critical way, not in an unabated way, but in a critical way to ensure that we move forward. But filibustering and obstructionism is not the approach that's needed for the moment.
I have 2 questions for you. The first one, is 10 hours truly that much for a bill that gives police the most invasive powers available to them? Is 10 hours really that long?
So 10 hours of what's called clause by clause. Okay, there's essentially hundreds of amendments, I'm told. Okay, 10 hours clause by clause, where 7 amendments have been considered, is substantial. I've been on many committees, and I've been, privy to many parliamentary acts that were passed. For example, C-15 is a UN Declaration Act, and I will go back to significant bills where it does move forward, because by the time the bill is at a clause-by-clause stage, there's a general sense of what needs to be done, and we move and advance those amendments. Some amendments the government will agree with, some we will not be able to agree with, some the opposition may be able to get together and override the government. And that's the parliamentary process. But what is not acceptable is obstructionism, and that's what I'm frustrated about, and that's why it is important that the committee meets today after question period. And there's an opportunity for the committee to demonstrate that they're taking this seriously and that parties are willing to work together to advance the bill in a timely fashion.
Wait, so if you see what you consider to be progress today, is there a world in which the motion that was put on I think on notice today doesn't go forward, and then you just let the process play out?
The motion is on notice, and we are, we are essentially giving notice that we will be willing to move the motion in a manner that will ensure that this bill gets through the committee stage.
What about systemic vulnerability? What precision do you make?
I've said, the number of items I've listed here, I have previously stated that we will have clarity. There will be clarity on systemic vulnerability. Well, I think the committee process will determine that, but we've demonstrated an opening and certainly our ability to find language that ensures that systemic vulnerabilities are addressed in a way that doesn't pose any risk to the privacy protections that Canadians expect.
Minister, you will soon have a decision to make about whether Correctional Services Canada should be using AI, as they're considering, to help draft criminal profile reports for offenders coming into federal prisons. There's been concerns raised to us about this, about what it might mean for errors for both victims and people going into the system, about what it might mean for biases. Are you going to allow this to be expanded and used in the criminal justice system?
Thank you for the question. It's a question I'll answer another day. For the purpose of today, it is about ensuring that C-22, lawful access, is advanced and goes forward.
So any changes that come to the bill as a result of this afternoon's committee hearing, will those be made public?
So as the amendments are introduced, they do become part of the public domain.
You mentioned that you're open to reducing the period of metadata retention. I believe 2 weeks ago you told us that you were not open to that at all. So what has changed?
This is an iterative process where I've been consulting with Canadians, I've been consulting with stakeholders of all different shapes and sizes, and over time, one of the important considerations around reduction is the realistic time an investigation takes. I had a very long and difficult conversation with law enforcement who said that yes, while they would prefer a year, a shorter time frame is something that would be satisfactory to them.
Can you comment on the Toronto Police announcement today about the recent string of shootings involving the U.S. consulate, and just what kind of resources federally are going to be going to help out with that?
With respect to the Toronto Police, the RCMP is in constant contact. The Senior Deputy Commissioner, Brian Larkin, speaks to the Chief of Police almost on a daily basis. And we will extend support both from a national security perspective, but also in terms of additional tools that they may need. Right after the unfortunate death of the officer last week, the RCMP deployed 2 emergency task force units to Toronto Police as additional resources. So it's a collaboration amongst law enforcement that will continue, and we are very grateful for the work of the Toronto Police Service in these most difficult times.
Is your plan to have the Senate pass this by the time they break?
In Montreal, several officers are under investigation for alleged racist acts, such as collecting hair samples from people arrested. Do you think this is a proof of systemic racism?
Look, I've had a opportunity to speak with the Chief of Police for Montreal. The issues around systemic racism in policing is a long-standing issue, but one that modern police services need to address, to confront and to address. And I do believe that the initial steps taken by Mr. Lafreniere, as well as the Chief, speak to the measures that are important. But the confidence of Canadians, the confidence of Montrealers towards their police is critically important, and it does require a great deal of work. And I do believe that the leadership by Montreal Police will over time ensure that confidence is rebuilt. This is not an issue unique to Montreal. This is a broader issue, and one I hope is dealt with in a constructive way where community and police can work in collaboration towards better policing methodology.
We're going to take one last question, please.
Minister, what's the time frame you're looking at for metadata retention then?
Look, we're open. We have an amendment that has been introduced. I can't really speak to that because it has, well, it's parliamentary privilege, so it is with the committee. But I have shown a willingness to look at a reduced timeline from 1 year. Well, what I want to see it become is a practically reasonable timeline for police, and the timeline that generally police have advised me is around 6 months.
Do you want this passed? Do you want the Senate to pass C-22 before they break for the summer?
Last question.
Ideally, but what I do want to see is progress on this bill. I want the committee process to be completed, and I want certainly to be able to advance the bill in a manner that is there, that community has been asking for, that victims groups have been asking for, that those in law enforcement have been asking for. It is critical that the bill advance in a manner that is respectful of all those who are impacted. Thank you.
Frank Caputo, Member of Parliament for Kamloops, Thompson-Nicola, also Shadow Minister for Public Safety here. Just reacting to what the Minister said, I'm really proud and pleased to be flanked by some of my colleagues here, some of whom sit on the Public Safety Committee with me. This bill was introduced in late March. We warned the government from the get-go that there would need to be significant study. They did not allocate enough time for the study of this bill, particularly on Part 2 of the bill. As a result of their poor planning and their neglecting of the study required for this bill, they are now attempting to ram it through. I will remind them, it is now Tuesday of our last sitting week. We heard from witnesses, some of whom were experts in the field, and we were hearing from 3 experts at a time, sometimes for only a few minutes from each expert. There are substantial powers granted to Part 2 of this legislation, and Canadians have repeatedly told us that they want due consideration. Now the Liberals are choosing to ram this through. The Minister stood in committee, or sat in committee, and I asked him about amendments. Please, go back and check. I asked him about the amendments, and what he said is, we'll see. And now he's coming forward saying, whoa, yeah, we're going to have amendments here. Where was that attitude 3 weeks ago? Where was that attitude a month ago to listen to these groups? There are questions about the big brother nature of Part 2, and he talks about a filibuster. We have passed 7 amendments, 9 amendments, he said. That's not a filibuster. What he calls filibuster, I call scrutiny. What he calls taking time, we call democracy. Sometimes democracy takes time, especially when there might be issues of drafting. The government has done itself no favors in terms of the way it's communicated on this bill, the lack of clarity that they've proceeded with on this bill. As Conservatives, we are prepared to pass Part 1. The Minister said law enforcement needs these tools. Fine, give them to them. We will pass Part 1 swiftly. Get Part 1 into the House of Commons. I formerly prosecuted internet offences against children. Lawful access was something I dealt with professionally. So I know the impact of Part 1. He doesn't have to tell me the impact of Part 1. And as somebody who has lived in the trenches, I am prepared to say we would pass this.
What do you make of him accusing your party of being divided over this issue?
Not true.
Where does it come from?
Oh, I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Could you speed things up a little bit? Like, this is basically his point, that things were too slow.
Well, things might be too slow for him, but that's not the actual issue here. The issue is, are things too slow for Canadians? Or perhaps, are we going to move too fast for Canadians? We have heard from civil liberties groups. We have heard from professors. He wants us to pass this bill now, ram it through, when there are legitimate charter rights. I don't know about you all in the media, but I think it's my job as a part of His Majesty's loyal opposition, our job as a part of His Majesty's loyal opposition, to ensure that we pass constitutionally compliant legislation. When you ram legislation through over objections or over considerations from law professors and civil liberties groups, you have a problem. That is precisely what the Liberals are trying to do.
I want to add something here. My name is Jacob Mantle. I'm just a backbench MP. I'm not even on the Public Safety Committee, but I care about this issue, and that's why I've been participating actively. What a preposterous proposal to come in front of you and say, now is the time. We have this false choice between you have to be with the police or be with criminals. This government has been in power for 11 years. They have had all the time in the world to thoughtfully consider lawful access and have not done so. So don't blame the opposition when you bring forward a bill that is filled with problems that civil liberties groups have said, filled with problems that even some police have raised that we tried to address, filled with problems that tech companies have raised for us. We've had numerous tech companies say, I'm going to leave Canada if this legislation is put forward. We have been engaging in civil and substantive debate in the committee. That's not obstruction. That's our job. So don't give me this false choice. They've had all the time in the world.
These amendments appear to appease, though, tech companies and their criticism of the bill. So if they come out and support the bill after they amend it, would you guys still continue to back it?
I'm sorry, I don't know where tech companies said that they were going to support these amendments. These amendments haven't even been made. Well, that's what I took. I'm sorry, but how can we say what tech companies even think? We haven't even seen the amendments. See, like that, therein is the whole point, right? It's this programming motion is just going to ram these amendments through. We won't even have time to hear from people. The whole point of clause by clause is to scrutinize the bill, and they are preventing that.
Let me add one more thing that's really egregious about this programming motion. If you read it, they retroactively amended the deadline for the submission of amendments to yesterday at 4:30 p.m. We didn't have this notice until this morning. Talk about good faith. That's bad faith. That's bad faith, creating a window for the government, only the government could use, secretly, to put forward their own amendments. The minister stood here on May 27th, I believe it was, and said, we will work in a cooperative manner to listen and hear those concerns and respond to them. Go back and check this transcript from his press conference. I think he's breaking that promise.
Thank you. On this part two, are there amendments that could be made that would make you feel more comfortable with part two? I'm just trying to understand the chief concerns that you have. Could they be resolved with amendments that in today's committee meeting, do you think?
I think that we have put forward and we have stated very clearly our objections to this bill, and there are many issues that need to be debated. Where were we here 2, 3, 4 weeks ago? We will scrutinize this bill with the diligence that it requires. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Today marks a very unfortunate milestone for Mark Carney. Today will be his 100th missed question period. He's skipped out on 100 out of 136 question periods. That is completely unacceptable. Now, to be clear, today he's at the G7, and Conservatives have no issue when the Prime Minister of Canada represents our country at the G7. However, of the 100 question periods that he's missed, fully 64 of them were while he was right here in Ottawa. So there's no excuse for those absences. He was literally in the building or around the corner. He could have easily showed up and defended his government's record. Of course, it's no surprise why he's hesitant to defend his own record when it comes to the economy. After all, if we take a look at just some of the stats right here in black and white, he's delivered the only G20 country in a recession, 15 consecutive months of business investment decline. He's delivered the second highest unemployment in the G7, the highest household debt in the G7, and Mark Carney has delivered the worst housing costs in the G7, and he's even doubled Justin Trudeau's massive deficits. And according to the PBO, Carney has just a 1% chance of meeting his deficit to GDP fiscal anchor and a greater than 50% chance of the debt to GDP ratio increasing. Now, what does all this mean for hardworking Canadians? Well, more and more Canadians are facing such sad hardships. The struggles they are facing are only getting worse under Mark Carney's terrible economic record. According to a United Way survey released just a few days ago, 38% of respondents report experiencing at least one form of food insecurity in the past 6 months. More specifically, 28% say they could not afford balanced meals. 27% worried food would run out before they had money to buy more. Canadians are literally worried about whether or not they can put food on the table after 1 year of Mark Carney's record. So it's no surprise he's trying to avoid accountability in the House of Commons. But if he's going to skip out on question period, what Conservatives are asking is that, at the very least, he put his time to productive use. He could pick up a pen and start writing legislation to undo all the bad Liberal laws that are causing this problem in the first place. He could easily bring forward a bill to scrap the industrial carbon tax, which puts Canadian manufacturers and workers at a massive disadvantage to their American competitors. He could repeal the No More Pipelines bill. That is literally the reason why there hasn't been new investments and new pipelines exporting Canadian energy to new markets. He could repeal the West Coast shipping ban that unfairly targets Canadian exporters of energy while not affecting international shipping. Now, those are just some of the things he could put his time to good use. But it's important for Canadians to remember, Mark Carney, after making all kinds of grand promises during the election, that he was the guy he hired in a crisis, that he had a plan that would bring about good things for Canadians. None of that has materialized. In fact, it's only gotten worse. So that's what Canadians need to understand in Mark Carney. He's skipping out on accountability because of his terrible record that is making life much harder for Canadians, delivering the only country in the G20 in a recession, and keeping in place all the bad legislation that caused the problem in the first place. So I'll hand it over to my colleague, Monsieur Berthold, for some comments in French, and then happy to take your questions.
Merci beaucoup, Andrew. Aujourd'hui marque un triste anniversaire pour un premier ministre qui a oublié, qui n'est plus PDG, mais maintenant un parlementaire élu par la population. C'est aujourd'hui la 100e période de questions que manque Mark Carney sur les 136 périodes de questions qui ont lieu dans cette session parlementaire. Donc, 36 périodes de questions qui ont été manquées. Qui n'ont pas été manquées, mais seulement 36 périodes de questions à laquelle Mark Carney a assisté, ce qui fait en sorte que c'est probablement le premier ministre qui a assisté à la moins de périodes de questions depuis son élection. Et le pire dans tout ça, c'est que pour 64 d'entre elles, M. Carney était ici même à Ottawa, peut-être au deuxième étage de ce bâtiment, au troisième étage, peut-être ailleurs en ville, mais il a choisi délibérément d'éviter de rendre des comptes à la population. Aujourd'hui, on le sait que M. Carney est à l'extérieur pour le sommet du G7, puis il faut être très clair, c'est normal que M. Carney soit au G7. Mais ce n'est pas normal que pendant 64 jours où il était à Ottawa, il a évité la Chambre des communes, il a évité de venir répondre aux questions des parlementaires de tous les partis pour entendre les questions que les Canadiens ont, parce qu'on n'oublie pas que l'opposition est souvent la voix des Canadiens et des Canadiennes. Mais ce n'est pas par hasard que M. Carney manque ces périodes de questions-là. Vous l'avez vu le jour où on a appris qu'il y avait une récession. M. Carney a tout fait pour éviter de répondre aux questions des journalistes, des médias. Il a même évité de prendre une question à quelqu'un qui lui posait directement cette question-là. Mais il y a aussi d'autres sujets, puis j'ai ici une liste, moi aussi, que je voudrais mentionner. S'il manque autant de périodes de questions, c'est parce qu'il a peur de son bilan. M. Carney ne veut pas parler pourquoi le Canada est le seul pays du G20 en récession. Il ne veut pas parler pourquoi il y a 5 trimestres consécutifs de baisse des investissements des entreprises au pays. Il ne veut pas nous expliquer pourquoi le Canada est le deuxième taux de chômage le plus élevé du G7, pourquoi on a le niveau d'endettement des ménages le plus élevé du G7, les coûts de logement les plus élevés du G7. Il ne veut pas surtout expliquer pourquoi, après avoir dit qu'il gérait les finances d'une manière extraordinaire, on a doublé le déficit de Justin Trudeau, et ça, pas personne ne pouvait imaginer que quelqu'un pouvait faire ça. Il y a la directrice parlementaire du budget qui a dit de Mark Carney qu'il avait seulement 1 % des chances d'atteindre son objectif budgétaire de déficit par rapport au PIB et plus de 50 % des chances d'observer une hausse du ratio dette-PIB pour un économiste présumément le mieux placé pour redresser, et avec toutes les promesses qu'il avait faites concernant les tarifs, on comprend pourquoi, malheureusement, M. Carney évite de vouloir rendre des comptes. Ce n'est pas des facteurs mondiaux qui sont à l'origine de ce qui arrive. Sans ça, on ne serait pas le pays avec la seule récession dans le G7 et dans le G20. Ce sont des facteurs que M. Carney voudrait et pourrait contrôler. Malheureusement, quand on veut lui poser des questions, trop souvent, il est absent de la période de questions. Donc, c'est un triste anniversaire pour la démocratie. M. Carney doit enfiler son habit de parlementaire, de premier ministre du Canada, enlever celui de PDG de Brookfield et se montrer à la Chambre des communes pour être capable de faire en sorte qu'on diminue le coût de la vie, qu'on diminue le rythme de l'inflation, qu'on permette aux jeunes de pouvoir encore avoir espoir d'accéder à des logements, qu'on baisse le nombre de Canadiens qui doivent aller dans les banques alimentaires à tous les mois, 2,2 millions de Canadiens qui y vont, et surtout diminuer les taux de crime qui sont extraordinaires au pays actuellement, un taux jamais vu, et particulièrement les crimes reliés à la drogue. Donc, M. Carney a un devoir à faire, c'est d'être présent en Chambre ici, rendre des comptes aux Canadiens, aux Canadiennes et aux parlementaires. Merci.
Andrew, have you spoken to the RCMP at all regarding lawful access? Have they asked you to support this bill?
Look, let's be very clear. Conservatives are supportive of the measures in Bill C-22. I think my colleagues just addressed all these comprehensively. But
Saskatchewan. So I'm just curious if you've spoken specifically to the RCMP about.
Well, our lead on the file, Mr. Caputo, I believe, has addressed the questions on Bill C-22. I share the concerns that he has about Part 2 of the bill and the massive government overreach, and now the government bringing in a programming motion, cutting off debate on a bill that's giving unprecedented and massive government new powers to the government. No more witnesses from committee. No ability to have further debate. It's an incredibly aggressive guillotine motion to stifle debate and prevent witnesses from testifying.
CBC ending Hockey Night in Canada.
No.
Sur C30, c'était l'examen article par article ce matin. Pourquoi les conservateurs ont voté pour l'article concernant les pesticides, les nouveaux droits aux ministres de permettre des pesticides nocifs pour l'environnement?
Vous savez, c'est dans l'article par article, on va voir finalement quelle est la position des conservateurs quand va venir le temps de voter sur le projet de loi C30. Donc, ça sera très, très bientôt parce qu'il y a déjà une motion d'allocation de temps sur le projet de loi C30. Donc, pour ce qui est du vote spécifique de ce matin, honnêtement, je ne suis pas au courant du vote, donc je ne peux pas commenter là-dessus. Mais je peux juste vous dire que quand vous allez voir la façon dont on va voter sur le projet de loi C30, vous allez voir la position réelle des conservateurs.
Do you own a Cybertruck? I'm just curious. I saw a photo of you. Was that you driving one?
I drive a Dodge Caravan and a Chrysler sedan, and it's Dodge Caravan is not diesel. No.
The other one.
No.
So whose Cybertruck was that you were driving, or was that you in the photo? I'm just curious.
Oh, which photo are you?
There was like a photo circulating online of allegedly you driving. That's why I'm asking. I'm just curious.
I don't own one. And
maybe in White City, driving around.
One last question. I might rephrase it just a little bit, but the announcements today was that Rogers and CBC agreed that they're going to split, and Hockey Night in Canada will not air on CBC on Saturday nights anymore. Just as someone who I imagine grew up watching Hockey Night in Canada and that kind of thing, particularly the public access to hockey as it was, do you have any thoughts on just the agreement that was announced today?
I literally heard about it just before I walked in, so I'm not really familiar with all the details on this. Huge hockey fan, and so I have to take a look at exactly what they announced.
Thanks,
Drinking water, I don't know if you've had a chance to...
I've had a chance to look at it.
Have you had a chance to look at it? So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's really unfortunate that this government fails to recognize the right to clean and safe drinking water as a human right, something that's protected under international law, Article 25 of the United Nations Declaration, and is a protected charter right under our Constitution. Moreover, what's concerning is that it only provides for First Nations to have jurisdictions over water within boundaries of reserve. It does not
You've got
include...
a lot of Indigenous people living in your riding, and there's no reserve there, for sure.
Well, you know, I mean, why I say that is because, you know, it doesn't include, and it specifically says this, if you look at Aboriginal First Nations lands, it does not include Aboriginal title that's been claimed by First Nations or confirmed in the courts. This is a very serious omission, particularly with the fact that this government is reducing environmental protections at a rate we haven't seen in history, and at a time where they're putting forward projects of national interest that have, you know, weakened environmental protections, and now on First Nations who won't have any sort of say on implications to contamination of water that will contaminate the source water within reserve territories. That is very troubling. I'll give you a couple of examples. Grassy Narrows, who has suffered from mercury poisoning for decades, something that the Prime Minister callously laughed in the face of a woman, Chrissy, who is suffering from mercury poisoning, failing to apologize, at a Wampascat, whose water was contaminated by mining. Let's not forget all the copper mines that they're looking at opening right now. What's going to happen with the tailings from the copper mines into First Nations water if they don't recognize Aboriginal title that has been claimed by First Nations or have been confirmed in the court? This is irresponsible, and I think they're just building another pipeline to the court, like with Bill C-5 and their projects of national interest.
That's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah.
I ask you about other topics, not related to the Toronto bill, but Competition Bureau is launching a study into competition within the food supply chain within Canada to try and deal with high food prices. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath. But what do you want to see out of that? What's your reaction to the Competition Bureau launching their own study on this? And do you have ideas as to what could change in the competition in our food market to try and help with food prices?
Well, our leader, Avi Lewis, has been very clear. We have 5 big grocery chains that have taken over a monopoly of groceries, gouging people at the checkout. On top of that, we have the practice of surveillance pricing, which is a creepy practice that is being utilized by corporations to charge people different things, different prices at the checkout for the same items. Things like baby formula, things like lettuce. You know, although the Liberal government came out with a bill yesterday around surveillance pricing, it doesn't deal with the root of the problem. I stand by our leader and our critic Heather McPherson, who has said very clearly, it's time for us to look at a public option for groceries. It's time to take away power from 5 big grocery chains who people like Galen Westons have made record profits while people in my riding are struggling to feed themselves.
And then a completely other topic, the Conservatives put forward legislation today to try and allow for magic mushrooms to be used as a form of therapy, not for recreational use, but so that physicians can do it to prescribe it to patients to deal with things like mental health issues. Do you support that avenue, and do you see any dangers or not with this?
So I certainly will leave that up to our health critic, but I do know that in the last Parliament, our former critic, Alistair McGregor, did support that, and I know there are folks in my riding who have used that kind of therapy to deal with their terminal cancer, and I do support that personally. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Do you speak French?
Je parle un petit peu de français, mais pas bien. Non. Okay. I don't know how it would turn out, you know? Okay, see you later.
Food prices. The Competition Bureau is launching its own study into competition within the food supply chain here in Canada, hoping to see if there's any way we can reduce food prices and increase competition. What do you think about this study from the Bureau, and what do you think? Do you have any ideas for how competition can be improved to lower prices for Canadians?
I certainly look forward to the results of that study. Personally, I'll wait for the results and see what they tell us.
Completely other topic. The Conservatives, I'm going to butcher the name, psilocybin, I think, but magic mushrooms essentially, put forward legislation to allow physicians to prescribe this for patients to help deal with mental health issues, such as PTSD, etc. Do you personally support that idea, allowing physicians basically to prescribe this as a drug to treat these issues?
Well, again, I would rely on the physicians to know what's appropriate and to give us advice on what to do in this circumstance.
But it's restricted right now, so this would sort of force the government to allow physicians to do that beyond the clinical studies that have sort of happened on behalf of Health Canada. So
yeah, well,
it would be more widely available.
I'm not a doctor, so I would await their advice on the matter. So.
Hockey Night in Canada is no longer going to air on CBC.
I'm sorry, what's not?
Hockey Night in Canada is no longer going to air on CBC. What do you make of that? And should the public broadcaster reconsider?
Well, I'm not a sports fan. I don't watch hockey, so you're asking the wrong guy. My father, he died a long time ago, but he would have been sad about that. But I'm equal. I'm calm about the whole thing. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's ask you about food prices. So the Competition Bureau is launching an independent study to see how competition can be changed through, from farm to shelf within our food supply chain. What do you think about the study being launched? It's not going to have a final report till spring of next year, but and do you have any ideas on how we can improve competition? Because there was talk from your government before about increasing options, and it never ended up going anywhere.
Well, look, first of all, I think it's great that they're doing that. I go grocery shopping just like most Canadians, and I'm shocked every time I'm at the till. I've got 2 small children that I have to feed, and as many parents of toddlers would know, I have a berry budget, right? So I understand that. And I think this needs to be something that, we do prioritize as a country. One thing that I've always thought of is that we need more competition in our grocery system. We kind of have the illusion of competition where you have, 3 or 4 big companies that really control most of the market. And so from my perspective, anything that is going to drive more competition, particularly at the end use, is really important. But we were actually hearing at committee last week, which I thought was interesting, at the Finance Committee, about how we also need more competition within the food distribution system as well, because oftentimes there's only one player in town, and so even for a Canadian farmer to be able to sell into grocery stores, they're often kind of selling at a loss to even get in to that space. And so as we're thinking about food security and food sovereignty, we need to understand what all of those barriers are to our Canadian food producers to make sure that they can get in, increase that competition, and provide more opportunities to Canadians.
And, the Conservatives put forward legislation today to allow for physicians to prescribe psilocybin, or otherwise magic mushrooms in a way, as a form of treatment for mental health issues. So
the Conservatives did?
Yeah, they put forward a legislation, and they had a veteran who's been dealing with PTSD who said this really helped him out.
Right.
Somebody who's done medical studies on this, who supports this change. What's your reaction to this? And did you personally support expanding the potential use of this as a therapeutic drug?
I don't feel like I know enough right now to have an informed opinion on that. I feel like I would need to understand more. I need to look at the legislation because I haven't seen it yet. I think I need to look more at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, CBC has announced today that it will no longer air Hockey Night in Canada. What do you think about that?
I think that's very sad. What was the reasoning given?
Well, Rogers holds the
rights, and so they don't want to pay for it? Or?
And so they were unable to come to an agreement with Rogers or Sportsnet on that. CBC wasn't making any money from it. It was a way of them for, I guess, maybe filling programming time. But for whatever reason, they were unable to come to an agreement on airing the games. And so if you want to watch them, you'll have to watch Sportsnet or presumably a Rogers station.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, these are business decisions that broadcasters have to make, but I guess from a nostalgic point of view, and something that's important for Canadian culture and for Canadians across this country, Hockey Night in Canada is pretty emblematic of, you know, who we are as Canadians. We all know the theme song, and you know, at least for me, it conjures up a lot of emotions. And I think, you know, there's also something about being able, as a Canadian, to watch it on the public broadcaster and not having to pay for a subscription, to be able to do that, that, you know, might put some Canadians out of reach when it comes to watching Hockey Night in Canada. So, you know, I guess it's kind of sad. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
The Competition Bureau is launching a study to see how the food supply chain could be increased in terms of competition to help deal with food prices right now. Wondering what you think of the study, and do you have some ideas for how our system here in Canada could change to help lower the stress on Canadians' pocketbooks?
Well, I don't think we need a study to show what Canadians are seeing every day, which is the consequences of 10 years of inflation. I would like the Liberal government to stop re-announcing over and over again measures that have not helped and provide real relief.
Scheer put forward legislation this morning to allow physicians to prescribe psilocybin as a therapeutic to help with mental health issues, otherwise known as magic mushrooms, if you will. But it would be a much wider spread use to allow physicians to make that decision rather than the current restrictions we have under Health Canada. What's your reaction to that? Do you think it should be more widely available?
Well, I haven't had a chance to read the legislation, so I'll put that caveat out first. You know, when I was health critic, I am familiar with some research that indicates that psilocybin may be effective with palliative care physicians in dealing with end-of-life issues, and they have sought an exemption from Health Canada to sort of facilitate research in that narrow context. So I've come to think that that should be allowed. Anything broader than that, I think we need to look at.
The expansion of medical assistance in dying for if the sole condition is mental illness. I know you guys don't have a spot on.
Yeah. Well, when this issue came before Parliament, last Parliament, I think Ed Fast had a bill. I think we voted against extending MAID where the sole underlying condition was mental illness. The overwhelming evidence at that time was that the psychiatric community did not feel that they had the medical basis to confidently move forward. I know that that issue is before a committee of the House. It should be reporting this week, I think, and so we look forward to reading that report. But up to now, we've been very cautious on expanding MAID in that area. Oh. You know, I go back and I'm going to indict Stephen Harper, who claimed to be a hockey fan. Under his watch, CBC was allowed to sell the theme song to Hockey Night in Canada. And that was the beginning of the end of a Canadian institution. You know, Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada on CBC with that iconic song is part of our heritage, it's part of our culture. And under Conservatives and I guess now Liberals, we're just seeing the dismantling of you know, a unifying part of our, you know, our Canadian identity that's been there for decades and decades and decades. So it saddens me. It's not the same. I mean, you know, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, it's our national broadcaster, it's our national game. You know, I think hockey is it's embedded in Canadians' identity in a way that very few things are. And I think this is the kind of, you know, corporatization of our culture that I've seen happen over the last few decades under, you know, conservative governments, and frankly under this conservative government led by Mr. Carney. And I think it's regrettable.
So what do you think should have been done? Because this was the NHL taking in bids for hockey rights, as they do. CBC had it for a long time, but Rogers put up more money. to get those rights, and so they have the rights now. So what would you have, retroactively, what would you have done? Was it hand more money to CBC to keep the rights, or what was the solution that you would propose?
Well, I'm not familiar with the corporate details of the negotiations, but I will point out CBC ran Hockey Night in Canada from the beginning of television in the 1950s right up until this year. So clearly money hasn't been an issue before in terms of CBC running.
They were airing it this year, but like Sportsnet and Rogers were doing all the production and everything since the rights got lost many years ago. So
I don't
like within the last 7 to 10 years.
Okay, well, so
I don't mean to mean decades or anything.
Yeah,
Anyway,
we'll say 70 years.
70
years CBC managed to hang on to Hockey Night in Canada, and while there's corporate pressures and things, I think those should be resisted. I just find it hard not to associate Hockey Night in Canada with CBC and everything related to that. Some things transcend the corporate buck, and I think at a time when Canada is facing threats to our sovereignty, and being Canadian and being united is more important than ever, I think we have to pay more attention to these national institutions that unite us. So, not everything can be sacrificed at the altar of the almighty buck. That's what I'll say. Thanks.
Hockey Night in Canada is no longer airing on CBC.
Okay.
What do you think of that?
So hockey fans in Canada, everybody loves hockey. I'm not sure why.
It's going to be on Sportsnet now.
I have no comment on that. We all love hockey, and we want hockey to continue to be everywhere, especially on CBC. It would be good.
It should, especially on CBC, do you think the public broadcasters should reconsider it? Because like sports, like cable subscription or something like that to watch the national sport.
Well, that's up to who's making those decisions to decide. But we all know how much Canadian loves hockey.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
In Canada, it's no longer airing on CBC. Any thoughts about that?
No, but
You're catching off guard, aren't you?
yeah, ask me a hockey question. I love Hockey Night in Canada on CBC. I'm sad to hear that. I know Sportsnet and TSN do a really good job, though, so I'm glad that most Canadians, I think, will be able to watch hockey on. And when was that decision made?
It was made, well, it was announced today. We know that. And so apparently Sportsnet and CBC can no longer come to some sort of agreement because Rogers has the rights, they air it on Sportsnet, CBC would air some of the games. I'm not clear which ones exactly.
Well, I think that's unfortunate. I hope that that's not a final decision, because I'd hate to think that there are Canadians out there growing up in small Indigenous communities across Canada that aren't able to watch Saturday night. I know CBC Hockey Night in Canada. I mean, that's something that I grew up playing hockey. I grew up on a First Nations community that we didn't have a lot of options, but we always had the ability to watch hockey. And I really hope that that's in contemplation as they move forward.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks.
I co-chair with the senator. Yeah.
When will you meet again? You've done one round. Right?
Yeah. So
then what happens?
I'm guessing it will be when we come back in the fall.
In the fall?
That would be my thought process.
Will you be asking for like an update then?
Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely. So.
Okay,
thanks, guys.